Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna start and get it out. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, run the intro in 1, 2, 3, live.
If you're looking for the most amazing podcast ever, well, this isn't it. You're listening to the Average Fellas Podcast, guaranteed to let you down and leave you unsatisfied.
Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of the Average Fellas Podcast. Woo! This is, it's great to be here. It's great to be recording an episode. I got an awesome guest today. Really excited for the show. Just super stoked. Real quick, guys, I just want to get in some numbers really fast before we bring the guest on. I just want to say thank you. Thank you guys so much. We reached the 500 mark, so over 500 downloads. Thank you guys so much. About 2.5 months into the production of this podcast, so I just want to say thank you guys so much for participating. If you guys are sharing or doing all the subbing and all that stuff, thank you so much. I just want to say shout out to you guys, the listeners. Once again, you guys can catch us on all the popular podcast platforms, all of them, wherever, Google, Apple, you name it, we're on them. You can always email us at averagefellas@gmail.com, averagefellas@gmail.com. If you guys want to, chat me up or something, shoot me an email. Tell me what you think about the show. Maybe you have a cool idea for the show. Shoot me an email. I'd love to hear it. Let's get into it. So my guest today is my sister-in-law. So that's all. That's really cool. That's a really cool thing to bring some new family onto the show. But also she's a director of a nonprofit, and I'm really excited to explore some of the topics that we're going to talk about today with her. So without any further ado, I give you guys my sister-in-law, Katrina. Hey, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you, Zach?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Oh man, this is exciting. Woo. I just got to get my nerves out real quick. Okay. I feel like there's people have been on the podcast, and I want to bring some sort of official, I guess tone to the podcast, but I'm such a jokester that it's very rare that I, get a guest like you on the show that we can talk about some really cool topics today. And I'm really excited for it because, super excited just to have you here. Most of the people are my friends, and I get into some of their jobs and stuff. And so, this one I was just really excited for. So anyways, enough about me.
I like to think that I'm also your friend.
Yes, you are. You are my friend. Yes.
Sweet. Cool.
You actually went to my wedding.
Yeah, I did.
You were one of the few. That's
yeah.
Actually, it's surprising. I have had pretty much half the wedding party on the show already. So
all right.
Just try to get the rest of them on. This is the next step, because there's only 25 of us or something. So anyways.
Yeah. After you do your wedding, you can do our wedding.
There you go.
Mine and James's. Yeah.
That'd be great. If you guys want to catch up with everybody, we could record everything, put a little book together, a little audio catch up for you guys. Oh my God.
Okay.
Maybe that could be a new wedding thing. Maybe they're into that. Like an audio guest book.
Ooh.
I don't know. Anyways, what's new? What's going on with you?
Well, I'm just coming out of a class. I'm taking a class through U of I right now, the University of Illinois, called Carceral Landscapes.
Ooh.
And we just read a book this last week that absolutely blew my mind.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty interesting class. I mean, especially, I don't know. It just sounds like. I mean, can you give me like a simple like 2-sentence thing about the class, maybe?
Yeah, it's basically studying prisons and the construction of prisons and where they're located from a variety of different disciplines.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, psychology, criminal justice, philosophy, sociology, and most recently we read the book called The Color of Law, which looks at housing and legal housing discrimination in the United States federal government and local governments throughout history, explaining the segregation of neighborhoods. So it's been so learning, and I'm really glad I'm in the class.
Man, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I know my wife and I are like going through a book right now called The Color Compromise. I actually have my book club tonight. And oh my gosh, some of the stuff they explore in that book, like that you bring up, I don't say that as in like a fun thing, but like, but some of the, they talk about some of the housing situations, and I'm very curious to even follow that even further. So it sounds like, it's just as a kind of an eye opener. You learn history one way,
Yeah, 100%. This is all it's a whole book full of stuff that was just never touched on in my entire public education growing up. And I'm a little mad about it.
Yeah.
You should absolutely read this next. It also talks about the church's support of segregation in housing.
Wow.
Yeah, it would supplement well The Color of Compromise.
Definitely. I'll definitely have to take a look at that. Anyways, this is all obviously these are all leading to the meat and potatoes of this episode. So question: you are someone who is interested in the skill of debate. Is that right?
It's true. Guilty.
Okay. Guilty. And could you explain, I know, maybe in a nutshell, what that means as far as the very fundamental skill of debate that I think maybe have been the foundation of what you're building as far as a nonprofit? Is that right?
Yeah. So competitive debate comes in a whole lot of different formats, but the elements that all of the formats share is basically a verbal jousting between two sides. It can be two individuals or two partners or even up to 4 people on each side of the debate. And you choose a topic, typically like a resolution. It could be anything about philosophy or sociology or economics or politics, literally anything. And one side affirms the resolution and the other tries to argue against it. So it's about learning to construct arguments, deliver them verbally, and then tear apart other people's arguments.
Wow. See, I feel like that was something that maybe I was naturally gifted at when it came to being a bully. That was probably one of my. I mean, because it just sounds like I could. I mean, obviously, I'm saying I know that what you're talking about is a skill that is used in a professional system, and there's actually real things at stake when it comes to some of the debate things that you're talking about. But yeah, it seems like I didn't ever know there was a practice of argument almost. But then I seen that kind of growing up with maybe in some Christian philosophy stuff that I'd seen, they always debate atheists and stuff, but I didn't necessarily know that there was a bigger community that was debating other things. Obviously it was, wasn't something that was around. It wasn't something that was introduced into my environment, so I didn't really know that was out there. But
there's a lot of us. I mean, really, we're just a pretty nerdy group of mostly closeted nerds. So it's we're not out there in the public trying to debate people. We kind of keep to ourselves.
Well, it's funny that you say that you're a closeted nerd group or something, but I guess my brother-in-law, is that something that, came up as a shared interest that maybe you guys kind of like bonded over? Was that a,
Oh my goodness, that's how we met.
oh my gosh. You guys met in debate.
It's even more adorable than that. No, we met because he started volunteering for my nonprofit.
Oh my God. That is so cute. Oh my God. What a teddy bear.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
He's the best.
Can this guy be any more of a teddy bear? It's National Teddy Bear Day today, if you didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah, so
happy Teddy Bear Day.
yeah, give him a hug. He's obviously a teddy bear.
I absolutely will.
Such a good guy. So yeah, you guys met over this shared interest in in debate, right? And I know like when I first met my brother-in-law, he'd bring up the topic of like competitive forensics. Is that is that something that's like can you explain that a little more? Give me a little more detail on that as far as like what does that mean?
Yeah, it's basically competitive talking. So debate is something that falls under the umbrella of competitive forensics. These most often happen at the high school or college level.
Mm-hmm.
So you can participate in any kind of format of debate, but there's also speech competitions, and that can be anything from oratory to extemporaneous speaking to informative speaking to like an after dinner kind of speech. So there's actually dozens of different kinds of speeches that you can compete with, and then people watch you perform your speeches, and you compete against other people in debates, and it's like any sports tournament, really. You compete against other people, and when you lose, you drop out, and the last man standing wins.
What was it that was what really sparked your interest in this kind of competitive, I guess, thing?
I just thought it would be cool to try. I walked on to my team in college. Yeah. Yeah, it was just something I was like, hey, I'm not very good at speaking to people. This seems like I would learn a lot of valuable skills. And so I joined the debate team when I transferred into Wheaton College.
Wow, that's cool. It's just, and so from there, is that kind of like what's sort of, has that turned into like something that, like, I know it's now a passion of yours because you're obviously doing, you've obviously work with a nonprofit that, is seeking to, promote and provide these skills, right? What was there a time like in your life where it went from just like maybe like it was just a fun thing to try to learn new skills to where you're like, wait, maybe I can actually do something with this? Was there a moment like that you thought maybe?
Yeah, actually, it was after I graduated from college and I read the book, What Color is Your Parachute? It is like ranked the #1 best job search book, and it has been for like the last 40 years. They've come out with a new revision every year for like the last 20 years. It's, I don't know, a big deal. And if you're trying to change career paths or figure out where you're best suited in the job world, 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's amazing. So I worked my way through this book and got to the end of it, and a lot of it is just like a self-discovery. And so you kind of do exercises that the book encourages you to walk through to kind of pull these answers out of yourself and your past and your identity. And so I got to the end of the book and was like, oh my goodness, I would be best suited as a debate coach amongst a marginalized population. So I was like, that feels really right. I want to do that. So I started doing that.
Wow, that leads me to my next question. So obviously this passion obviously has led to, like you said, like the discovery of like this, what we're talking about, like, using these skills and, sharing them with marginalized people groups and trying to educate them and giving them a skill where they could, do something for themselves. So what is your nonprofit and what is its purpose?
So I run the Justice Debate League. It is a nonprofit that coaches debate teams in prisons across the United States. And the goal is basically to welcome incarcerated people into this closeted nerd group.
So, and okay, so but I think that is amazing because usually, I've had family members that that have been incarcerated before, and one of the things that is a topic of debate today is like, what about people that, prison doesn't teach people how to succeed in life or to succeed outside of prison. It's just a place for them to waste time, kind of. And then they are put in a situation where they come back to society without a valuable skill to use to be successful, right? Maybe I've heard that story a lot, and I've also had family members that have shared some of that sentiment. But was that one of those things that you wish to serve with your passion of debate, like that sort of story, I guess, if that makes sense?
Yeah, my initial goal, I would say, was I started in youth prisons because we keep hundreds of children locked in cages here in
Right.
Illinois, and Illinois is not alone. But I was living like right down the street from a youth prison that kept girls and boys. Also, the first time I learned that they had co-ed facilities anywhere.
Yeah, that's
I thought,
of it too.
yeah. But started working with these kids. A lot of them were around high school age. And pretty quickly, it became clear that the best thing that these kids could have is hope for a better future. And so I not only worked to incorporate them into the debate community, the high school debate community around Chicago, but also tried to introduce them to people at higher institutions of higher education and get them open to the idea of continuing to compete in debate at that level and thinking about continuing with their education after finishing their GED in prison.
That's very interesting because I definitely I believe that would do a world of a difference, and it is doing a world of a difference already because if students, I did student ministry for a long time with my church. I was a youth pastor for a while, so I did interact with students, and it's just one of those things where you see the world around you, and you just you see how young they are, and you just want them to have the best. You don't want them to suffer the same future that maybe some of the things that you've gone through or that you've seen other people go through. And so it's like it is important that like you said, you start off in youth, like a youth demographic, high school students, and I think I really would maybe that's probably something that we need to do. If there's people working with youth, thank them and continue to support them because those kids are the future. They're the next people to reach to be employed in our job market after they graduate high school or continue higher learning, So, I'm definitely excited to hear that. But so you've started in high school, you said the high school age demographic, and then you worked into some of the colleges. So what's the future look like for that? Is that also moving into adult facilities or?
Well, yeah, I was only in the youth facility for about the first 6 months, and then I actually started coaching an additional team in an adult maximum security facility.
Oh my gosh, you're so cool.
Shucks. That was a little bit farther away, but, absolutely worth the drive. I feel like I learned so much every time I was in there. But then, yeah, the goal with them changed a little bit because it was a maximum security facility, and that often means that people are in there for pretty rough crimes. I got to meet my class for the first time and found very, very quickly that none of them were going to be released ever. They were all expected to die in prison. And so that's not that's not an environment where you can really encourage people to, use these communication skills or these argumentation skills or empathy or writing or critical thinking or whatever after they get out to get into college or to, access scholarships through a college debate team. It's like this is where you are and this is where you're going to be for the rest of your life. So how can we make this a program that will benefit you in the space where you're at?
That is such a different way to look at incarceration, because sometimes I wouldn't even consider those kinds of ideas. I wouldn't even go that far in my thought. There's a lot of oversight when it comes to incarcerated people, as far as like you said, like you can't, like, how do you use empathy when these people are going to be locked away for the rest of your life, and you're trying to, like, what motivation do they have to learn this? Mm-hmm. And it's, man, I feel like it's, it's just one of those things. Like I said, like a lot of oversights have kind of gone over these certain groups of people, incarcerated people. I don't know. I think today it's like one of the things, we had like this whole entire coronavirus situation happen where I didn't even know what that looks like for most prisoners, for most people that are incarcerated. Is there some of those things that you could speak on that maybe you're dealing with that you've noticed because of the coronavirus situation? Obviously, I know you're closer to that kind of, environment.
Yeah, it's horrendous and people are terrified, and they're making the psychological situation inside prisons even worse. In Illinois, we haven't allowed any visitors or volunteers in any prison since March 14th. So people haven't seen their family members. People haven't had any of the regular programming that they would have had access to, like a debate program. And most prisons, at least in Illinois, are reporting that they have people on lockdown almost constantly. So that means, depending on the facility, that you get out to go to the yard once a day for up to an hour, or once every 3 weeks. Just depending on how the facility decides to operate things. So people are really missing their families. Prison already takes a pretty big psychological toll. And now we've had over a dozen people in Illinois prisons die from COVID, and people are terrified that their family members are passing and they're not getting to say goodbye to them or see them again. But this has also added a really interesting look into why it might be good to continue working toward the rehabilitation of people who are even sentenced to life or have very long sentences. Because now, for the first time in a long time, we are very seriously considering and actively releasing a whole bunch of people who are older because they're at risk for COVID, at risk for dying from COVID, and they've served like 40 years of their sentence or whatever, and so they're now being released so that they don't die, so that they don't spread the virus, and now they're going back to their communities when we never expected that to happen.
Yeah. And you didn't have a chance to, obviously there wasn't, that's why we need programs and, obviously like yours, like nonprofits like yours, because, obviously ultimately what we want to do is serve these people in a way. I always think this is one of my thoughts. I don't know if maybe I don't know, maybe you could share this idea. Okay. I always feel so there's a thought that I feel like there are some people that maybe their real life reality, what they've experienced in life, has never presented the opportunity to have access or learn or have knowledge of something a skill or maybe even a life path that would provide them a way to stay out of prison, or to stay, away from certain, crimes. Because I think certain environments, obviously, where certain environments produce certain crimes because, the lack of opportunity maybe, or or even exposure to something, like exposure to debate, the skill, and so for me, it's one of these things that I see a desperate need for, is obviously, like like you talking about, like reaching these kids at a younger age and showing them that there is a opportunity for them, that there is another way. And I know this is such I think like a shallow argument, because I'm sure everybody says this, but it's true about like rehabilitation. Like, what services are we offering to change, not just because we want to change the physical, the physical actions of somebody, but we don't ever do anything to change their heart or their mind or how they think, right? So for me, I feel like it's necessary for us to do these types of things, because that's what rehabilitation is. Now we're able to we're letting people out to save their lives, but we did nothing to rehabilitate maybe their heart and mind. We didn't give them another way. So I don't know if that's a thought that maybe you share, or if that's sort of like, yeah.
100%. And most prisons today, or departments of corrections, say that rehabilitation is a core part of what they're trying to do. And that's not been more than talk in any department that I've come into contact with.
Does Illinois is that privatized prison that they have there, or is there both?
No, Illinois doesn't have private prisons, thank goodness. But I mean, if you know anything about the state of Illinois, our politics are quite messed up. So having it run by our politicians isn't really a great situation anyway.
Yeah, tell me about it. I don't know. It's just crazy. There's so many, like, I don't know what it's hard to even put your finger on certain politics now, because you're just like, there's just so much backstory that you have to know now in order to make a decision currently. And I'm like, what do I, how do I make a decision if I don't know everybody's past 20 years, So
yeah,
I understand what you're saying. It's just a strange thing, but, do you feel that, prison reform is necessary? I guess that's such a general question, but I think just to kind of make it plain, do you feel that prison reform is necessary?
I would say prison reform is a very tame word for what I think is necessary.
And so, well, I mean, like, obviously you've been exposed to some more of these things, that these, situations that these people face, and you're obviously more aware of what's happening. For someone like me, myself, like I said, I have had family members that have, been incarcerated and stuff. I've never been in trouble with the law or anything like that, but I've always given it sort of like a backseat to any issue. Like, oh, they're just prisoners, I'm trying to, I want to understand more of these certain concepts that maybe I wrote off, I also did that with like some other people groups, not just incarcerated people, but, can you speak to maybe those people that, maybe have shared that same sentiment, that, they're just prisoners, they're just incarcerated people, like, what would you tell? Could you maybe sum something up that would, I guess, in their defense of these incarcerated people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing that opens individuals' eyes to the humanity of another is proximity. So I don't think I fully realized the humanity of people who are incarcerated until I was in there shaking hands with them and learning alongside of them. I think that prisons are typically intentionally removed from urban hubs and taken away from the sight of most people because it is intentionally out of sight and out of mind. Most people don't have a prison as a part of their daily life experience, don't live near one, don't have to think about one. And so I think the main driving factor for why people can feel that way, and why I spent most of my life feeling that way, is just the fact that we literally put them away and then we don't have to think about it.
Yeah. It's a part of like it's like, it goes back to like being a part of the culture, right? I think it's like a part that's like maybe sort of like it's in our culture to just set them and forget them, kind of like, you know, oh, well, you know, and some of the jokes that are even in popular like media is just like, oh, well, dad's not here, he'll be back next Christmas. Like those are the jokes, you know, so-and-so's in and out of jail and stuff like that. And it kind of got me. That's kind of why I'm excited, just because there's some of those things that I've dealt with, that I am dealing with, that I'm kind of like I'm exposing myself of, you know, because it's like in the book, The Color Compromise, one of the author says, he actually quotes, I think he's quoted Martin Luther King, and he says that racism has to be exposed. It's like a wound that's festering, and it needs to be exposed to, you know, to the air, to allow it to dry out, to heal. And, you know, I know like it's maybe, you know, like prison reform is one of these things for me that, like I said, like it's just a cultural, you know, jokes that we make, that we just, whatever, it's not in the forefront. It's not something that we even, I mean, I don't really ever, except for when a family member of mine was dealing with it, you know, and even when they were going through being incarcerated, you know, my mind wasn't there, my heart, my compassion for the situation wasn't there. Whether or not, you know, this person deserves the justice that they dealt with, you know, as a Christian, I know like I've failed one of the things that Christ told us to be responsible for, and that's obviously for people that are in prison, you know, widows, orphans. And so one of these things, I guess now it's like, for me, it's like I'm not trying to go back and right my wrongs. I just want to educate myself and understand how I can, you know, participate to provide something of a future for certain people, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
What are some common misconceptions surrounding prison reform? Because I feel like some people are hearing this and maybe they're just like, oh my God, they're gonna let everybody out. Oh my God, there's murders on the streets. And I'm like, you know, I actually worked for a company that hired incarcerated people, I guess. I don't know how I want to say it, and it was funny is that some of the stories they would tell, I didn't understand it. You know, I didn't get it. There was misconceptions I had about prison and stuff. And so maybe there's something like you can shed some light on that. Because for me, you know, there's certain, I guess, people that have been incarcerated, they have their, you know, what's it called? It's like people in this, like in the military, they have a bond, they have a shared experience. And that's one thing that I got to see a little bit when I was working with some of these people. So maybe, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the misconceptions, because none of these people are good people. Like, they're working hard trying to get a job, you know, and the misconception is that they're out here releasing prisoners. And I was like, I mean, I worked with them, you know, I held the same job as them, and they did it just as fine as I did, you know? So anyways, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. I think the main thing there are 17 main things. One of them is that when you're thinking about how murderers are going to be released on the streets, you have to first acknowledge that there are way more murderers out in the streets than there are in prisons right now. At least in Chicago, the clearance rate for a murder for detectives to actually find the person who committed it is 40%. So if we successfully arrest 40%, then there are 60% of the people who have committed murder who are still on the streets. And the numbers are far worse when it comes to sexual assault and other violent crimes. So we we have people in prison who have done very bad things, and we have people living in our communities who have done equally as bad and worse things. We just haven't legally found them and charged them with that crime. The other thing is, in my experience, especially when people are sentenced for a long period of time, so usually if they have served time for what qualifies as a violent crime, they have spent so much time in prison that the norm for that experience is to rehabilitate yourself in that time and convince yourself that there is no way you are ever coming back here, that you need to be a new person, and you need to find a way to make a new life for yourself. So the people who have committed violent crimes in the past are very, very unlikely to commit violent crimes again in the future. There are people who have been formerly incarcerated who then go on to commit violent crimes, but much more frequently, it's actually people who are incarcerated for lower level crimes initially that then get sentenced for harsher crimes later on. So if someone has already been convicted of and served time for a crime that you might be afraid of, the chances are that they have spent good time working on themselves and figuring out how they're going to succeed in society when they come out. That has been my experience. I'm confident there are exceptions, but I think that's the best rule of thumb to have when considering that.
Wow. Yeah, I sometimes I think like I've watched obviously I watched a lot of prison movies in my day. So obviously, I mean, maybe they're I obviously, this is just very ignorant of me because I'm just talking about my examples from movies, obviously. But are there typical things that are very typical for incarcerated people, like abuses that they deal with that maybe non-incarcerated Americans should be aware of, things that are because like in the movies, this is one thing I always see is that you got to be ready to be prepared to get shanked all the time. And there's always like these, certain ideas that we have about how prison life is, but I'm sure there's some things that we weren't, some things that we aren't aware of, maybe there's some more subtle, maybe abuses that these people deal with that we should be more aware of.
I think no one in prison has the exact same experience. So I'm sure there are prisons where the violence rates are very high and where there's gang violence and where you would need to be on the lookout for things like that. But with the people that I've interacted with and met, they're just not at all people that I'm afraid to be around. They are safer and kinder and gentler than most men I meet on the street. So I don't think it should be assumed that anyone has had that kind of experience in prison.
Yeah, no,
you should probably just ask them.
Exactly, right? Exactly, because once again, it just goes back to like the ignorance of me, just like basing everything off of the movies I've seen, So, this is the Average Fellas podcast, so we don't set the bar very high, okay?
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, once again, just thank you for sharing these things with us. I know, I wish I was a better orator, like a better host person, but I'm getting there. I think I'm getting better. It just a topic like this, I know would be better served with somebody who is a little more aware of the situation. But like I said myself, I'm trying to discover and learn myself. So it is, there's some rough patches that I'm going to go through, but eventually we're going to get through this interview and we're going to get the message out there,
Yeah. And for the record, I think you're doing excellently.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So as far as JDL, what is the hope? What is the ultimate hope for what does success look like for your program in regards to a non-incarcerated person and maybe like a pre-incarcerated someone who, I guess, a demographic person who falls in that category of at risk, like reaching them before, and then obviously reaching an incarcerated person or working with somebody. What ultimately is like the goal or hope for those people?
So we don't deal at all with people who are in at-risk populations. There are other debate leagues that do that kind of thing, but unfortunately we don't have the capacity for that. The hope for incarcerated teens and individuals is that it would give them hope and allow them to operate and compete within the existing competitive debate structures, both so that the nerds of the world who are thinking really critically about these kinds of issues can interact with and debate people who are being directly impacted by a lot of the debates that we're actually having.
Yeah.
And also so that the people who are incarcerated can gain confidence in themselves and their communication abilities. And I can't really think of a better skill set than effective persuasion and communication that for someone who's about to come out into the world and face a whole bunch of barriers, legal and perceived and otherwise, in trying to get a job and trying to access housing. So hopefully it's something that sets up people for success in whatever the rest of their life may look like.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for me, I don't know if you've heard this, but I heard this story too, that there's I've heard of another nonprofit teaching prisoners coding as well. I'm just like, man, these ideas are so great because, like, I imagine like these are very capable people. We're not talking about like somebody that's in prison that, I don't know. Once again, goes back to the movies. There's always just like, gangbangers and cholos in prison or something like that. Like it's always like a low level, just like thought process that they demonstrate in like a lot of, popular media for prisoners in general. The idea is that they're just not smart. The idea is that they're just, low life people who can't have a thought beyond whatever crime is or something. And it's sad that that's what we portray, in our culture and our media, obviously. But I just thought, think about these things, thinking about people using a skill, and I would just could you imagine like the creativity of some of these individuals that use undiscovered, untapped potential that they never were exposed or able to use, and by providing something like, debate or even coding, whatever it may be, those things, it's just like, it's kind of one of those, I guess it's just like, it's a, what are the possibilities, like for humanity, if this is something that you can give them, what are the possibilities for, these people, like you said, like what are you going to do to motivate them? Right. What are you going to do to motivate a person serving life in prison? And so it's not like you can go in there and be like, hey, let me teach you something that's going to really improve your life now. It's not like to them, it's probably like, whatever, dude, like I'm here for life. But being able to sit down and be patient and teach them a skill that doesn't just happen overnight. They have to sort of adopt it for their own. They have to take it for their own. And if you're an incarcerated person and you want to learn that skill and you put yourself, you apply yourself to learn it, like, that demonstrates that person now has their own interests. Like I didn't feed it to them to forcibly make them learn this, but I guess it's like children. Like I guess if you ever see children like play, you don't teach them these bad habits. They they just learn sometimes, but you also don't teach them like what to be interested in, and then they learn what they like. Like you can put something in front of them, but a lot of like my wife tells me this all the time. Don't, I'm really interested in showing my kids like every movie possible. And she's like, but our kids aren't going to like what you like. You need to be aware of that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And I feel like a lot of times in prison, when you talk about prisoners or you talk about like prison reform and stuff, people are like, well, we need to do it a certain way. We need to do it this way. They shouldn't have any activities. They shouldn't have any way to learn or to read. They should just sit in a box and whatever. That's it. And, I feel like this is like, it's a missed opportunity for the betterment of all of us. Like there's prison, or doing these sorts of things, like teaching a new skill to these people, it only benefits us, because what happens if the next idea that, changes the way the world works comes from one of these incarcerated people that we just forgot about, we just, whatever they're, and when you talk about connecting the humanity, I think that's what it is for me. What's been really kind of connecting me back to it. We talk about like George Floyd or any of these types of situations with Black Lives Matter. What connects me back to the humanity is that there was a missed opportunity in that person's life. There was a missed opportunity to harness the power of whatever creativity that life could put together, and I don't care how people like split their views on those things, because personally, I just think it's a tragedy that these things happen. When they talk about marginalized people groups, like the least of these is what the Bible tells us to care about. The Bible tells us to care about the least of these. And I for me, I make Bible references because I've grown up in church my entire life. So my outlook on life always has a biblical shade to it, and I think about the least of these, and these are people who are forgotten. These are people who are just, they're nobodies. Like, why would I care about George Floyd? Why would I care about prisoners? Why should I have any like little care or thought for them? Because they're a dime a dozen is the attitude towards these people, these types of, of individuals who suffer these things. And I thought, wow, like, man, it's why it's important for me to have you on the show, because I want to reach that point to where I see the humanity and I don't lose the humanity in looking at what's happening out there, So yeah, it gives me hope that there's, programs like this obviously happening, obviously, I know there's going to be more. I know there's obviously going to be like, I'll have more. I know there's a few people I'm going to have on in the future that are going to speak on some of these things that are going to be great. But I think it's necessary for us to talk about it and not just sweep it under the rug like I have, myself. I'm kind of putting that on myself. But, man, thank you so much for just sharing these things with me. I'm going to start crying. Watch. No.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Zach.
Yeah.
I'm glad to share.
Yeah, no problem. No, it's been really good. So as far as JDL, the Justice Debate League, I want to get that right. JDL. Where are some places that maybe you can point the listeners to maybe engage with either Facebook or whatever it is? So there's some places that our listeners can find you guys, find more information to, obviously learn more about this, like myself.
Yeah, totally. So we have a website, justicedebateleague.org. We also are on social media. We have both a Facebook and a Twitter. However, those have not been very active recently. And honestly, right now, because of COVID, Illinois is not the only place that has shut down access to volunteers and educators and family members. There's actually not a single prison in the country that I'm aware of that is hosting regular programming right now. So we haven't had a regular team operating since March.
Wow.
So we're working on the process of trying to develop some courses by correspondence. And we're in a little bit of a reevaluation phase right now. Any support or thoughts, you can reach out to us through our website. I'll very much appreciate it.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah, no, I will definitely provide the links on the obviously on the show when I post it and stuff. I'll provide the links for all you listeners out there. Is there, I want to try to like start wrapping this up a little bit, but is there something that maybe any last words for people that, like I said, may just sweep this topic under the rug, may just, whatever, they're incarcerated people. Maybe there's some last words that you can leave with them to consider, maybe, consider thinking about, obviously this topic. And then is there any last words that you give to somebody who may be possibly, is there anything that you would say to those people who are looking for an answer as far as like something like this, like where maybe they are incarcerated, maybe they are going through something? What would you say to, I guess, those people? I don't know. I want to give you an opportunity just to kind of shout out who you need to, but to really, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. So I would say the most valuable connections that people can have while they're incarcerated are with people on the outside. And the most valuable way for people on the outside to learn about people on the inside is to talk to them directly. So if you're someone who is being, exposed to this idea for the very first time and you don't really think about anyone who's in prison and you haven't, there are a whole bunch of different websites where you can just Google "write a prisoner" and you can become a pen pal with someone who's incarcerated and learn about them from, oh my gosh, it's your beautiful wife.
Where the heck? Oh.
So you can talk to someone and become proximate.
What was that called again?
writeaprisoner.com. Sure.
Is that right?
I don't actually know, but you can Google that,
Yeah,
and there
Google
will
that.
be 5 different sites because there's people all over the place that help facilitate
really cool.
this kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're also very sustaining connections for people who are incarcerated. So if you're incarcerated, or if you are, thinking you may become incarcerated, thinking about joining one of those programs to find a pen pal, I think would be also a really good way to maintain connections on the outside. And if I can just throw in one last shout out for anyone else who is really getting into this for the first time, I'd say the most widely read book on incarceration right now is probably Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. And it's very good, but it's also very, very academic. So if you're going to be getting into this for the first time and you're not getting your PhD, maybe the 2 books that I would recommend are Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, which also just came out as a movie, and Rethinking Incarceration by Dominique Gilliard. It does a really good job of kind of capturing what Michelle Alexander does, but in a little bit more of a palatable way for average fellows. And yeah, no problem. It also looks at it from the perspective of the church, if that's an angle that you're interested in looking at as well.
Wow, no, definitely, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to Google some of those books. I have to.
Yeah, totally.
Wow. Hey, I just want to say thank you so much for joining the call and participating. Like I said, this has just been a learning experience for me, dipping my feet in the pool, see what's going on, and just trying to understand it, because I don't want to. The last thing I want to do is make decisions on something I don't know anything about, and I've done that. I've jumped to a lot of conclusions. So, but yeah, no, I'm grateful, and I'm glad that the listeners out there had an opportunity to hear you and to hear what about JDL and to hear about some of the prison reform ideas and stuff, and just this whole conversation was great. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah.
No, thanks for having me on.
Not a problem. Hey guys, that looks like that's going to be our episode for today. I am once again very thankful for my guest today. You guys know where to find us. We're on all the podcast platforms. You can find us on Stitcher, all of them, Spotify, Apple, wherever you guys are listening to them, we're there. Follow our Instagram and our Twitter, guys. You could always catch up on our episodes that way too. And our YouTube channel. So all those good things. Thank you so much for listening, and peace out, guys. Laters.